think there's this false fantasy and romance of war and combat, and I think we have this false perception of what it was. And I think we made it into this big hype and this thing that we got so worked up for, so jacked up where we had to go. And I think that would have been the disappointment if we didn't go. And we sat there and waited. And finally the word came, and we went. 2 days into it. And we were driving and driving for about 2 days before we ever even saw anybody, before we even made contact with the enemy. And then we had about 10, 14 days of intense combat. And then it was over. And we thought the war was over. We thought we won. About a year later, I went back for my second tour. The stark contrast between the year before and then in 2004 when I went, it was a totally different place. IEDs, ambushes, really guerrilla warfare. It was totally different. And I wasn't prepared. And I was a combat veteran. We train and train and train. I was in an infantry unit. You can't prepare for those things. You can't prepare for things that you see, things that you have to do, the way that you're going to react to something. You can train for it. When the shit hits the fan, you just act. And you act to protect yourself, to fight for your life. I wasn't fighting for some heroic thing. I was fighting for myself. To come home alive. That's what I was fighting for. One of our units got shot up by our own aircraft. And we proceeded to go into the town as Al Nazaria. And we had this thing called the ambush alley. And you drive through it, and we're getting shot at from both sides, and it was just crazy. American vehicles were burning on the ground. American stuff was blowing up all over the place. And to see that firsthand, that American guys are blown up, that's when it hit me. A few days later, we got involved in a blue-on-blue friendly fire engagement, and what actually happened was we thought we were engaging the Iraqi Fedayeen paramilitary forces, and somehow converged fire with our own guys. We got into a night-long firefight with our own guys, shooting our own guys. They started calling in artillery, and it's called bracketing, and they shot behind us, and they shot in front of us, and they started walking it in, getting closer and closer. We were in our vehicles, and I just remember saying my last prayers, and I love you to my family, and thinking I was going to go. I heard over the radio something about a time on target. Come to find out that we had aircraft carriers overhead about ready to drop 500-pound bombs on our position. And thank God we found out the coordinates were our coordinates and were able to call it off, but I'll never forget that night. 4 days into it, 5 days into the conflict, going to my second deployment in Iraq. We were a reconnaissance unit, and we were going on patrols, routine patrols. And we were on top of a canal road patrolling, and my vehicle lost control and rolled over into a canal, and it's a 28,000-pound, 8-wheeled vehicle, and laid on top of me. Half my body was inside of the vehicle, half my body was outside of the vehicle, being crushed by 20,000 pounds. And they're trying to dig me out of this vehicle, and when they're trying to dig me out, the vehicle kept rolling on me more and more. The ignition switch was on. It was 130 degrees outside. I got diesel fuel pouring all around me. I got these thoughts going through my head. I'm going to crush to death. There's going to be a spark, and the fuel's going to ignite. I'm going to burn to death. We're going to get attacked by Iraqis, and I can't defend myself. I can only move one arm. I can move my right arm. And I just remember that I didn't want to deal with the pain anymore. It's been about 45 minutes total that I was there. I always had a sidearm on my side. And it just came to the point where I just felt totally helpless, and that there was no hope. And I decided that I was just going to put a round in my head and just end it. And went down and reached for my pistol, and it was the one day that I forgot my sidearm. I ended up calling for some support, and they finally got me out with 3 vehicles winching my vehicle off, and got medevac to Baghdad, and had some bruised up, banged up ribs. But it wasn't the physical injuries, it was my confidence was gone. The biggest thing was that stole my confidence, and I was scared. Come from being scared and wanting to live and being thrown back into that atmosphere was really tough. And I just remember going black, and I just remember this force just feeling lifted up. And then I thought I was dead. I laid on the ground, and I literally prayed to God to either make the pain stop or to let me die. Neither one happened. I crawled to the front to the driver's hole to see if my driver was still alive. And when I got to the front to see if my driver was alive, machine gun fire erupted. And I rolled off the vehicle into the ground. My buddy who pulled me out of my vehicle was the same guy who a week or 2 weeks before I'd cussed out for doing something and just laid into him. And he should have hated me. He should have been pissed off at me. When the machine gun fire erupted, he crawled over to me, yelled for the doc, yelled for the corpsman, and laid on top of me with his body to protect me. He was my best man in my wedding.